Well, it doesn't take very long to go through 50 rounds of ammunition when you're at a shooting range, especially with a handgun. So how long does it take actually to reload 50 rounds?
Well, not really that long actually. If you think about it per cartridge, you don't really spend that much time reloading. It's once you break it down, if you look at the whole process, yeah, it takes a little while, but you enjoy doing it. So what's the big deal? Still, I think people would like to know roughly how much time they have to invest making their own ammunition. So what I'm going to do today, I've been keeping track, especially on this, just because it's an interesting question. Like, compared to buying ammunition, making your own, you save a lot of money, but really how much time do you actually invest in making your own ammunition? I know for a lot of people that doesn't really make any difference because you enjoy it, but even when you enjoy it, I guess you could look at it as saying, well, how much money am I saving per hour? It's almost like a paying job. So you really have to take a look at the total investment of time put into it in order to assess that. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to take one of these cartridges. This is probably the most complex one to make and the most time consuming. It's a 45-120. It's got a cast bullet. It's got a gas check on it. A gas check that I make myself, so when I cast the bullet myself. It's got some cotton band filler. It's got your powder and your case, the processing you have to do to that, and the primer. I've tracked how much time it takes to do everything, and I mean everything. So yes, for some of you may be reloading like a 243, but or something else, 44 Magnum, right? Very common stuff to be reloading. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take it in the phases of how much time is spent in each part of the process. That way, if you aren't making gas checks, then you don't have to count that in. And I'll post a little spreadsheet, make it available for you to download. You can look in the description of this video. So I think this is an interesting subject to explore. So let's just get right into it. Okay, shall we begin this? Let's start with lubing these cases. That's sort of where most people think of starting when it comes to reloading ammunition. So I'm going to go through all the steps as I said before. I'm just going to cover them briefly, not follow it all the way through, and there'll be lots of steps in here that some of you don't need to include, but at the end of this video, I'm going to have it all tabulated so you can take out the steps that don't apply to you. And so let's get going here. Let's just get some of these cases lubed. Now let's move on to resizing the cases. Following the resizing of the cases, next thing we've got to do in the case of these cases is to flare the case mouths or bell the mouths. That's not something you do typically for copper jacketed bullets, but you have to do that for cast bullets so that they can get a bit of a start. So this die is going to just slightly flare out the mouth. Okay, the next step we've got to do is we got to clean these cases because you have to take the resizing fluid off them, and a lot of people do this in a lot of different ways, but you definitely do have to remove that resizing grease oil on the cases. So what I do, I've got some bottle of 99% alcohol here. It's really good to use the strongest stuff you can. And I just dampen a piece of paper cloth And then I take each case and I just give her a little clean like that. And they're really clean after that. Next, this depends on how thorough you want to be. I prefer to clean out the primer pockets every time between reloads. Use a little primer cleaning brush. Just tap it. Okay, now I've got the cases prepared and we can put some primers in them. That's the next step. I prefer using the hand primer. Works a lot better. And it's fast. Oh, and this is my grandson Nolan here. I forgot to introduce you. What we're going to do here is we're going to put a little bit of borax on the alloy to begin with. Mix this stuff up good. So this borax doesn't really mix the tin back into the alloy, which seems to concern some people to no end. And really, I find that is one of the most exaggerated fears in casting, is losing tin. Let's start with some casting here. I've got a little foot pedal down below. Fill up 4 cavities, 1 mold, and while that mold is cooling off enough for the sprue plate to cut off, then I pour the next one. Set that one aside, and then it's time to just roll them ahead. You want to wear some glasses while you're doing this, just in case you get a spillover when you open in your molds. You want to just tap the hinge bolt. So now we get to the next part that I've timed. This is not a huge batch of bullets, but it's a good batch. And so now what I have to do is I have to separate out all the sprue. These things are called sprue, and I'll throw that all back in the pot. Okay, so now let's get started with sorting these bullets, because I want to inspect each of them, make sure that they're all good, especially these big guys here. You know, you don't want to have any major blemishes on them. You know, check the bases and stuff like that. These little guys, these are 144 grain 38 caliber bullets, semi-wad cutters. And then these are the 540 grain ones used for that 45 120 cartridge. Well, the next thing that we got to do after casting the bullets is, got to have a beer? No, that's not what this is for. We got to make some gas checks. That's going to be these little guys here. It's they sit on the bottoms of the bullets. So again, some of these steps won't be in your reloading. But I'm tracking the time required for all these necessary procedures for reloading this particular cartridge. And what I have to start off with then is I gotta make some gas checks. This is actually a handy thing to have. See, what I have here is I've got dies here. I have dies for various different calibers. This is for my 45. And what I do is I just take a can like this, right, and then just cut it around, taking gas checks out of beer cans, because these strips have to be cut very precisely in there. Yeah. What I do is I stamp the metal a little bit afterwards just to get it smooth so it feeds through the slot. But this is where you have to have the width of your strip of metal cut to a very close tolerance. Okay, so now we're ready to make the little cups out of these discs that I got here. Okay, so I'll take one of these discs, and you see how this works here. I got a little lever stuck in there so that when I lower it, it lifts out the completed gas check after I'm done. And it's going to press it into this little formed cup. So I'll take it, I'll lay it on there like that. And I'll kind of settle it down, tap it down, and there we have a nice little cup, if you can see that. So that's all formed and ready for putting on the base of a bullet. But you can see here, I've got my little gas check here. I'm just gonna snap that on there, and that die makes things so precise that cap just sits right on there nicely. So what I'm gonna do is I'll just take this thing here. I'm gonna give it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Okay. Now I've got my pressure on there. I had it totally off pressure to begin with. So I'm gonna take that out, and you can see what we have here. You have a nicely formed bullet. If it's a little bit bubbly, you can always take it a second press, but it doesn't really matter. See, it looks a little bit nicer, but really, it's no big deal. What I do is I always wipe the base of the bullet off so that it's clean. You don't want any lube to get onto your powder, right? You just wipe the bases off, and that's basically all you have to do to lube and gas check a bullet very quickly. So I'll just drop that in there, and it's a little bit heavy. I'll take a little bit off, drop that in there. I don't have to get it right exact, but get it close enough. So that's pretty close there. Dump that in there. Take another little piece of fluff. You know, some people use these trickle chargers. Maybe I'm just an old fuddy-duddy, but I find there's a lot of usefulness in the old ways of doing things. Because you can charge, I don't have to wait for a trickle charger to feed out the gunpowder. I just pop it under here and I'm done. Goes pretty quick. I want it to kind of fill in lengthwise, so I try to just stuff around the edges and kind of feed it down. Don't want to create a hard ball. Well, looks like we're down to the final strokes, folks. I mean, literally strokes. We're gonna seat these bullets now, and that will finish off our little test of how long it takes to reload this cartridge. Just for interest, you know, just kind of wondering, how long does this really take? When I squeeze off around at the range, you know, it doesn't take much time to pull the trigger. So sometimes kind of wonder, well, for every time I pull that trigger, how many minutes do I have to spend in the reloading room to reload that round? And with this information, for anything you reload for, I think you'll be able to predict that. So that's it for getting this cartridge reloaded, and we'll talk about it a bit at the end. Well, now it's time to take a look at the data we've collected. Let's take a look at this spreadsheet here. What you're presented with here is, on the left-hand side, I have all the raw data that we used in this test here, and I've broken it up into 5 categories. So the top part here in gray is all your standard reloading procedures that you have to do regardless of what kind of cartridge you're reloading for. And then in the blue section, we have the stuff that's specific to bullet casting. So, you know, you got fluxing, separating the sprue, inspecting the bullets, and actually casting the bullets, that kind of stuff. And then in the third section here in green, we have cutting gas check strips and forming gas checks yourself. So that's a very specialized aspect of reloading. Not many people do that. So that's why I'm breaking out these things, because they're basically optional type processes. And then in this orange line, I have lubrisizing and gas checking. I put that in there specifically because there is even among bullet casters, there's 2 ways of doing it. So you can do it by using a lubricizer, or you can powder coat your bullets. And there's always controversy and discussions about which is better. But in terms of deciding what's best for you, I think it's really good to have a look at the actual amount of time that's involved and compare that to how long it takes to powder coat a bunch of cast bullets, because you got to do one or the other. And then in the final purple section, I have weighing fillers and adding that cotton batten filler to the cases. That's a very specialized part that not many people are going to do, so I've separated that out. And then on the right-hand side here, I've kept with the same color coding and taken the bullet casting and those various categories out, and then the last line, remaining reloading tasks, it works out to be 64.4 minutes for doing 50 cartridges. So hopefully that's a bit helpful to you. If you look at the way I reloaded it, doing the full meal deal with that 45-120 and all the aspects in that chart, it really comes up to 3.4 hours or 3 3/4 hours to do 50 cases, if you include everything that has to be done. And that breaks down to per cartridge, you're spending about 4 minutes for every cartridge that you reload. In order to help you think this through, I've also created a couple of scenarios here on the spreadsheet, so you can see scenario number 1 if you're using just jacketed bullets and not casting bullets at all, not using filler or anything, real straightforward reloading, then you can count on a little over an hour to do 50 cartridges. It's like a 243 or 30-06 cartridge, something like that. And then scenario 2 gives you another alternative where you don't make your own gas checks, because that's something that not many people do anyways. The gas checks, making them contributes, it makes quite a bit of difference in time. You might wonder why anybody does that, and I think really the biggest motivation for making your gas checks, in spite of the time that's involved, is independence. There's quite often there's shortages of reloading components, so a lot of reloaders like to depend as little as possible on the supplies out there. Gas checks are often in short supply, as are bullets, so that's another reason for casting bullets. Let's just take a quick look at the two charts. These are also included with the spreadsheet. It's in Excel format. This one here takes that left box right over here, that left box, and it just line by line is each of those items, and it shows the weight in terms of time of each of those operations. You can see the lubrisizing just as a single operation does for doing 50 cases. It uses up a pretty big chunk of time. You can take your own time and go through this later, but what I'd like to show you here is this second chart, which takes the major categories of reloading and breaks them down. So you have your straightforward reloading tasks, like I was talking about, reloading a 243 or something like that. So that's the remaining reloading task bar on the top. And then you start adding in all the fancy stuff, right? So you got lubrisizing, gas checking. So there again, that's for the people wondering whether they should powder coat or go with a traditional bullet lubing approach. So you can see that's a good chunk of the time there. You can compare that to what you get with powder coating. And adding fillers is a very optional item, so I've shown that on its own. Making the gas checks, that's a big, you can see that bar there. So this gives you a really good idea of how much time you're going to invest in your reloading process, depending on what way you reload your cartridges. And at the end here, you can see the bullet casting is not a huge part of it, but when you're bullet casting, then that's going to bring in the need for lubrisizing or powder coating as well. So that's something to consider. You save a lot of money with bullet casting, but you're also going to use up some time, which, as I started this video off saying, that's if you enjoy what you're doing, time is worth nothing, right? So I hope you get something out of this video, and it helps you make decisions also on what you want to do in the future as far as reloading goes. And yeah, from the Way of Native Chronicles, I want to wish you God bless. Catch you next time.
Did you like this video? If you did, I think you're gonna like this one right over here. So check it out. And I appreciate your subscribing if you haven't done so already. Remember to do that while you're watching this next video. Click like, it all helps us out for this channel. Catch you next time.